Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Neurodivergent Connection. Today's conversation is about something a lot of families experience, but not a lot of people truly understand. We're talking about the IEP process, advocacy, and what it really looks like to fight for your child, not from a place of conflict, but from a place of connection. So sit back, relax, and grab your favorite beverage, and let's learn more about her. See you there, everybody.
I wanna believe in the truth, but only see what I'm shown. Got the freedom to choose, but can't decide on my own. Follow what the group is thinking, bottle up my intuition till it's popping up.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Neurodivergent Connection. Today I'm joined with Vicky Christensen. Welcome to the show, Vicky.
Thank you very much for having me, Reed.
Not a problem. As I like to ask every guest, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'll start by saying first and foremost, I'm a wife and a mom. I have two boys. My oldest son, Luke, is 21, and Luke was born with a very rare chromosome disorder.
Mhm.
So rare that we've only found one other person in the world with the same chromosomes as Luke. And then he has a younger brother who is 17 years old, and he is neurodivergent in his own way. He has ADHD and some inattention issues. I live in San Diego, and I have been a special education advocate for the past 15 years. I left a career in the pharmaceutical world, mostly by necessity. I had to educate myself on IEPs and the school system for Luke.
Mhm.
And after I took a certificate course at the University of San Diego on special education advocacy. And after I finished, I started an internship with a nonprofit here in San Diego, helping families, advocating for them at IEP meetings. And that led to a 15-year career. So right now I have my own small business, Blue Glasses Advocacy, where I
Mhm.
help parents all over Southern California. And lastly, I most recently wrote a book in 2025 called Uniquely Fully Enough: The Neurodivergent Parenting Journey, a memoir and a handbook.
All right. Now, when you first realized you were going to have to learn the IEP system, not just as a parent, but as an advocate,
I'm sorry, when did I?
when did you first realize you were going to have to learn the IEP system, not just as a parent, but as an advocate?
Y- Sure. So I think I first did learn it as a parent because Luke had an IEP at age 3. And I remember walking into that room, and an IEP team full of very nice people, and just sitting there and nodding yes to pretty much everything they said, and walking out of that meeting saying, I have no idea what I just agreed to. And then I started advocating probably 4 or 5 years after that, for clients as an advocate. So I first learned with Luke.
I mean, I've talked with so many people about the IEPs, and it must, when you first walked in as a parent, it must have felt like your head must have been spinning because of all the initials and the abbreviations and all the terms and not knowing what any of it meant.
Absolutely. It's a foreign language. And I tell that to parents all the time. And, I'll say I have so many wonderful clients, and a lot of them are very educated, in their own careers, what they do. But they look at an IEP document and they're just like, I have no idea what to say, what to ask for, what to agree with or not to agree with. So I really like to help parents dissect the IEP section by section. And I have kind of a systematic way I go through IEPs, and I try to, help and train parents as much as I can.
What did that first IEP meeting feel like emotionally?
Kind of a funny story here, Reed. I was very nervous to go into the first IEP meeting. I still remember it. And mostly because I had talked to some friends whose children who have IEPs were a little bit older. And I heard a lot of, make sure you don't sign it at that meeting, or make sure that, Luke's getting all the services that he's going to need. A lot of questions and questions put in my head. And so I was very nervous walking in. And, this was in a preschool classroom because he was 3. And I walk into the room and there were about 12 people sitting around the table because Luke has every service available. He had every service available. And they were all sitting at a preschool sized table in preschool sized chairs. And I have to tell you, I just looked at everybody and like took a deep breath, and I'm like, okay, that really lightened my mood right there. But it was emotionally draining. I remember getting a migraine after that first IEP meeting.
I mean, one of the things I remember from one of my guests is the importance of that you get your message across, that you make sure you have all your I's dotted and all your T's crossed, because you can walk away from that meeting and the school could drop the ball, and then you have to double back and sit there and scream at them and say, this was supposed to be all done when I left, and you just let the paperwork sit there.
Absolutely. The IEP is a legal document. That's very important to remember. And there's two things. It is the written IEP and then the implementation of the IEP. So I, first and foremost, help parents get a well-written IEP that includes, like you said, you're dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's. We have very solid baselines and present levels because that is what drives goals and supports and services. And once we get there, then we have the task of making sure that the IEP is being implemented with fidelity for the year, right? So that is very often the tricky part.
Now, did you walk in confident, overwhelmed, or protective, or all of the above?
I'd say early on, I would maybe take confident out of that. I was not confident early on when I'm talking about Luke. So I would say I'm a very different person when I'm in my son's IEP meeting than when I am in a client's IEP meeting. So early on, I was overwhelmed, truly overwhelmed. Everybody was nice, but I just, until I really educated myself, I was very, I guess, doubting that Luke really was getting all the support that he needed. I just had no way to know.
Now, you describe your son as a 21-year-old who wears blue glasses. Tell me
Hmm.
about who is he beyond the paperwork?
Oh, Luke is he's unique. He is, I'd start by saying, a really happy guy. Luke has this confidence that everyone is his friend. Everyone likes him. And what a wonderful way to go through life. Now, part of that is because he is delayed intellectually, so part of that does come from that delay. But he's very social, and I think because he is so open, and if you think everyone likes you, then guess what? Most people are pretty cool to you, and that's give you high fives whether you're at school or out in the community. But he is I like to say that Luke can do just about everything that a typical person can do. It may look different, it may sound different, and he has to work a lot harder to do it.
I mean, one of the things people don't realize about those of us who are neurodivergent is where it takes a normal person an hour to do our work or even understand something, it takes us 2 to 3 because it's the processing, it's the understanding, and then it's writing it down and understanding what we just learned.
Absolutely. And that's, as an advocate that and as a mom in school, you can have accommodations around that, but you have to consider life, right? Life doesn't always carve out extra time for our, loved ones who are neurodivergent. And it's really continuing to educate everyone around Luke, whether it's in the community, when we're out to eat, when we're traveling on an airplane, right? Like really trying to make sure he feels supported, but then people understand him as well.
Now, what does the system miss about him that you see clearly?
Are we talking school or?
Um, Maybe both at this point.
I think at this point he's about to age out of the school district in June. He'll be 22 in August. So he'll be done with school. And I really think that for the most part, they get him after this many years at school. We're part of a great district and I've been very, very happy. I think some of the struggles we have with Luke is, traveling is really difficult and not just by air. I mean, just leaving our town and doing a road trip a couple miles or a couple hours up the coast, it's very overwhelming for Luke, even with a lot of front
Mm,
loading. But it's different people, different places, different weather, everything. The routine is just so different and he struggles with that. And while he really doesn't have behaviors at school, when he's with his dad and with me and we're in a different setting, he has had meltdowns. He has had outward behaviors that we don't see. And I think people miss like it's right. He's not self-regulating and he's not, I think sometimes people look at him and they're like, oh wow, well, he's kind of like just a bad kid. It's not that at all. He's just having a really difficult time with the change in routine.
I think a lot of people miss that is that if we don't know how to self-regulate, we get overwhelmed, and that overwhelming leads to breaking down, having a meltdown, and people just don't see the other side of the story, and that's
Yeah.
the theme of everything.
Yeah, I agree. And then, with Luke, he also his verbal communication is there, but it's very delayed. And so, when we're feeling overwhelmed, I could be like, "Oh, I need a break," or "Please stop." And then you take into consideration the processing time. Well, he doesn't speak, in real time. It takes his brain time to think about what he's feeling and what he wants to say. And it's too much. It's overwhelming. And he'll melt down instead of using functional communication to, get his wants and needs across.
Now, what is something about him that makes you proud every single time?
He is such a hard worker and he does not give up ever. And he also doesn't complain. It's pretty amazing, but he just keeps trying. I mean, Luke did not walk until he was 4.5 years old, and he did physical therapy twice a week and then more once he started school since he was 4 weeks old.
Wow.
Luke, in first grade, we were sitting in an IEP meeting with his speech and language pathologist, who he still sees at school today, and we agreed he would never be a verbal communicator in first grade. And now there are times when she has to tell him to stop talking. And granted, it's not always easy to understand him. He has articulation issues, but he can put words together and he gets his point across. So I think I tell parents with milestones, like if someone tells you they're not going to do something by this age, but your gut tells you that they can still do it, keep working on it. So to get back to your question, he's such a hard worker.
Right. Now let's get a little bit personal here. If you were sitting here listening to us, what would you want people to understand about him?
That he understands everything you say. He may not be able to express himself as well, but receptively, he understands everything you're saying. So talk to Luke, look him in the eyes, treat him with the dignity that everyone deserves.
Mhm. Now, there's a difference between fighting for your own child and stepping into rooms to advocate for other families. When did that
Yeah.
shift happen?
Oh, it was a process. I mean, early on in my advocacy days, I think I was a more emotional advocate because it was the learning curve. But yeah, I think now I'm able to go into an IEP meeting and take the emotion out of it, ask the right questions, ask for the data, ask for the work samples, document everything, be collaborative. Um, and I'm able to go through the motions, taking that emotion out of it. And that's how I help parents. Parents, it's so often they apologize for like, I'm sorry, I cried in an IEP meeting. I'm like, are you kidding me? That's I'm a mom too. I've cried in IEP meetings. I still cry in IEP meetings. Take your Kleenex. That's perfectly fine. But that's part of how I help them is not being emotional and really being data driven and fact based, supporting them in that way.
Now, was there fear the first time you advocated for someone else?
Oh, well, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Was there fear the first time you advocated for someone else?
Was it fair?
Yeah.
Um, the first time, gosh, I don't know. I'd have to think back like 15 years, but are you asking if I guess I don't quite understand the
Were
question.
you fearful the first time you advocated for
Oh,
someone?
fearful. I'm sorry. I thought yes. Yeah. That's the honest truth. I was nervous. I'm like, wow, like this is a big deal. Like IEPs, like this is the support that a student needs at school, and I don't take that lightly. So I still feel it's a big responsibility.
Do you ever think, who am I to do this?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
Do you ever think, who am I to do this?
um, Occasionally I get a little imposter syndrome, but maybe not recently. I think I've gotten past a lot of that.
Mhm.
And I really think back, I mean, I work with parents as a team, definitely. And I really rely on my experience as a parent, with two boys who are neurodivergent, in very different ways. So 21 years of experience as a parent, and then 15 years of experience as a professional advocate. I've seen and heard a lot. But that being said, I collaborate with a lot of other advocates um, across the country, really, and even some special education attorneys. So I don't have that ego. If I don't know, I will tell you and I will get the answer for you.
Now, what made you stay in it for 15 years?
I'm very passionate about helping other parents. I think there are so many parents out there who can use help at IEP meetings, who can use advocacy support.
I mean, I can totally relate to the imposter syndrome. When I first started podcasting, or even when I first went to school, when I was away at school in England for my master's, the first thing that kept popping in my head was, do I deserve this? I don't have the greatest grades, and here I am away from home, pushing myself to God knows what. And for I guess for the first week, kept thinking, why me? Why
Yeah.
did I get so lucky? And even with the podcast, I kept thinking, who's going to listen to me? I'm just nobody. Then after a while, like you say, you become something. You become that voice.
Mhm. Um, I completely can relate to you and to the examples that you gave about yourself. And I think all you can do is I always tell myself, like, just keep doing the right thing. Just keep putting one foot in, 15 years ago when I started advocating and the imposter syndrome was definitely there. Like, just keep learning, right? Keep learning and sharing what you're learning with other parents. And I think that's what kept me going.
Now, let's talk about the actual room where the IEP meetings happen. I mean,
Mhm.
for families who are not aware of it, um, what is that room really like? What's the atmosphere in the room? What is
Yeah.
going on?
Well, so interesting because I will say that more than half of my IEP meetings are virtual still, even
Mm.
after the pandemic. That has been a
Wow.
huge shift. So parents, they sometimes ask me, well, what do you think? Should we be in person or should we be virtual? Both of my boys, I always attend in person. And I always tell parents, like it's a convenience for it to be virtual. It's ultimately up to you. I still think there's benefit from being in a room full of people. So, when we're in that IEP meeting, in that IEP room, I really, I try to break the ice for parents as much as possible. If it's it's not usually the first meeting, but even the meeting location, it could be in a different room. You may not know exactly who, which gen ed teacher is going to come to the meeting. So I always tell parents, like, let's kind of break the ice before we start, in on the meeting, a little small talk. Like I try to get parents comfortable
I
and
think,
the team comfortable.
yeah, I think one of the big problems is for parents is when they step into that room for the first time, I think it's fair. They don't know what to advocate for. They don't know what to
Yeah.
ask for. And I think from what I've learned from talking with so many guests about IEPs is the parents don't think to turn to the child and go, what do you want? What do you think you
Right.
need? And
Yeah.
that's the crucial thing is it's not what their parent really wants. It's what the child wants that can help them. And a lot of
Mhm.
times it's the child that knows better.
Oh, absolutely. So I always encourage, even some elementary school students come to their IEP meetings, and it's at the parents' discretion. But as they get older into secondary school, attending at least part of the meeting, right? I mean, it is a meeting about them, and I know that can be intimidating, right? So like I think back when I was in school, if I had to go into a meeting where there's like maybe 8 adults and they're all talking about me, I would have been mortified. So, I always tell the parents, like, talk to them a little bit. Maybe they come to the part of the meeting where we really talk about their strengths or maybe some of the supports and we get their feedback about what's helping you, right? And I agree with you, Reed. I mean, it's so important to hear from the student.
Hmm. Now, what are parents often feeling but not saying?
It's a good question. I think very often they're feeling that, and the reason they've called me is because their child isn't supported enough. Maybe the grades aren't good, maybe they're not making progress, but very often parents don't know how to say that in an IEP meeting. They don't have the language. They don't want to upset anyone because these are also the people that are supporting their child. So, sometimes like I work with them just to come up with language and I'm happy to say it in the IEP meeting, but I think that's something that's very important even throughout the school year to have that language to be able to express your concerns. But it typically is about either they're not getting the support or services they need, or this is another one. The school is saying that they're at grade level, right? This is
Mhm.
what we're seeing at school, yet a parent's working with their child at home and they're not seeing that. They're like, they're not, they're too, they can't do the math. They're putting in progress that, they can answer these reading comprehension questions, but I'm not seeing that at home and I don't agree.
Now, what are schools often feeling but not saying?
Hmm. That's another really good question. I think my honest answer to that question is, wow, how are we ever going to implement this IEP with fidelity
Mhm.
because of limited staff, right? We
Mhm.
understand, especially students with a high level of need who get a lot of service minutes. How are we actually going to make this happen?
Mhm. Now,
Yeah.
you have a background in communication studies and healthcare. How does that
Mhm.
communication change the outcome of an IEP meeting?
Well, I hope. So I will tell you this. I've been in, I don't even know, hundreds or maybe even thousands of IEP meetings. And if there's one commonality between everyone, it is a breakdown of communication.
Mhm.
It's that it's not open, or someone's not being transparent, or it's the way the language they're using. The team is saying one thing, but a parent is hearing something else, or the parent has a concern, but they don't have the language to express what that concern really is. There is almost always a breakdown of communication. So I hope that my background in interpersonal communication helps with that piece.
Now, what's one phrase that can immediately shift the tone of the meeting?
This is not us versus you. This is about the student, and we're all on the same team to help support the student.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot from a lot of people, and people think, oh yeah, they're not on the side of the student really. They just want to get this meeting end through and get back to what they were doing. The parent, but if the parents are strong and they sit there with you, it's like, no, you're not on my side. You're not on my son's side.
Yeah.
If you were, you would listen to his needs and my needs and give us what we need.
But here's the thing, there's almost always one or two people, like the teacher, who really is on your side, who really is student
Mhm.
centered, because you have teachers at the meeting, therapists at the meeting, but then you have district
Mhm.
representatives at the meeting, and they're not always on the same page,
No.
right? Very often, the people who are supporting that student day to day, they want what's best for the student.
Yeah.
Then you have district people who they're thinking budget, which is not at all appropriate, but that is the reality. And unfortunately, sometimes those teachers or those any staff who are working day to day don't feel that it's a safe space to say certain things, because you have district representatives there. So sometimes I have to be the bad person at the meeting, and call them out. And, I've actually had districts bring up, we don't have the money to do that. Well, that is never an appropriate response,
Mhm.
right? It's an individualized education program. So it's about what that student needs. So that's what we're going to talk about in this meeting. Um, yeah, that roadblock is, though, sometimes it's difficult. Teachers don't always feel safe in the meeting.
Yeah. Now, what's one mistake families make that's completely understandable?
I would say not reading. Well, first of all, keeping track of when progress and IEP goals are due, because that is something that, I mean, that's kind of the foundation of the IEP, is the student making progress. And they typically come out like 3 or 4 times throughout the year. And very often parents aren't receiving them, or, oh, I think they emailed me that, but I don't think I ever received them, or I didn't look at them, or I didn't look at them. Understandable, because right, everyone has so much going on, and you just it's another email, another thing that we have to do, so that I can see. And another thing is, I always tell parents, at an IEP meeting or when those progress reports come out, ask for work samples, ask for the data that was used to measure that progress, because progress is also always almost always very vague, right? Like, this student, if the goal is 80% and it's the annual IEP is 2 months out, well, they're at 60%. And I say, then you ask how they got to that 60%, because you can't just pull that number out of the air. There
Yeah.
has to be data that shows that.
Now, how do you help parents stay calm when they feel protective?
I think that's when parents really need me to step up and take charge of the IEP meeting and feel confident that I will bring up the things that are hard, that those difficult conversations, that I understand their parental rights and I will represent them, to the best of my ability in that IEP meeting.
Now, when you educate families about their rights, what's the reaction you see most often? Is it relief, anger, or empowerment?
I think, uh, I think sometimes it's anger or surprise, I would even say. I was recently in an IEP meeting, and first IEP meeting I was with this family, but they had had multiple IEP meetings without me, almost every month, like 3 months in a row before. And they had requested in this meeting, like the district had just assessed the student and they said, we really think it would be a good idea, like just to have someone else assess the student for an unbiased opinion, which truly is a request for independent educational evaluations, which is a parental right. And um, the district never once informed them of their rights to request an outside assessment. They just said, oh, we're the experts. So as soon as I came in and I heard that, I'm like, well, I think I'm hearing a parental request for outside for independent assessments. And the parent was like, well, why didn't you tell us that that was one of our rights? So I think it's surprise and anger
Mm,
that they're not informed
mhm.
very often from the district.
Now, what's one right families are shocked to learn they have?
Probably that they can call an IEP meeting every 30 days.
Have you ever seen a parent's posture change once they understand their rights?
I have. I've seen parents, I think it's, they feel more confident, like, okay, I'm actually part of this IEP team. Like I have a say. I have a path, right? Even if I disagree with the IEP team, there is another path that I can take to advocate for my child. Yeah.
Now, you say you approach everything from a child-centered perspective. What does that mean in real life, not just as a phrase?
That you think about what's best for the student or the person, whether it's in school or out in the community, that it's not just about resources, right? And it's not just about, well, this is what we typically do, right? This is what we do. It's no, this is what needs to be individualized for this person.
Now, have you ever had to remind the team to come back to the child?
Oh, yes, very often. Yeah. And it's usually because they don't want to give a certain service. And I always go back to like, let's talk about the student, let's talk about the observations, the data that we see here. I think that justifies the need.
What does it look like when a meeting becomes truly child-centered?
It's collaborative. Needs are talked about and addressed in the IEP. um, Parents feel that they have a voice. All of a
Mhm.
sudden there's better communication, right? It's I think everyone feels positive because we're actually supporting the student.
Now, what has been the hardest moment in this journey, either as a mom or as an advocate?
Well, as a mom, I would say it's the unknown because Luke's chromosome disorder is so rare that especially early on, but it still happens today. We've heard a lot of, well, we don't know. Luke will have to write his own book. We're gonna learn from Luke. I mean, you never want like a world-renowned geneticist telling you he's gonna learn from your son. It's the unknown.
Was there ever a meeting that left you in tears?
As a mom or an advocate.
I guess let's go both.
Yeah, absolutely. As a mom, 100%. Luke had a really rough, I think it was third grade year. And I was so frustrated. They were probably more tears of anger than of sadness. Maybe those came later. But yes, as a mom, as an advocate, um, I mean, I've never cried or teared up in a meeting, but some not tears, but there have absolutely been many, many IEP meetings that I come home and I'm just so frustrated about, right? It's more frustration maybe when it's a client and I'll just get on my computer and start researching or reaching out to
Mhm.
attorneys and it just does not sit well with me.
Now, what keeps you going on the days you feel tired of fighting?
I'd say, over the course of the past few years, I feel that more of my cases have become litigious and things, I've seen budgets decrease and I've seen services cut across the board, like unilaterally. And it has become sometimes feeling like you're fighting more than advocating for certain clients. But then you go to a meeting, because I'm in a lot of meetings, and you're able to advocate and make a real difference for a student. And that's what keeps me going. Because for all the meetings where maybe things didn't go as well, or we have to have another meeting, or I have to refer them to an attorney, there are always those families and their students where I feel like, wow, I do think I made a difference. And this child is going to be better supported and going to start making progress. And that's what keeps me going.
Mhm. Now, you're on the Special Education Advisory Committee in Carlsbad Unified.
Mhm.
When you're at the table, what change are you pushing for?
The number one change that we have always been pushing for is more inclusion in schools.
Mhm.
We have worked to, there's a team of us, work to do compassion days in elementary school, do assemblies in high school, about inclusion and belonging and what does inclusion really mean, right? At different stages in school. So I would say inclusion is our number one push.
I mean, now that you bring up inclusion, what does it look like when it's done well?
It looks like that student is meaningfully participating in whatever environment they're in. They belong and they are treated, they feel, I should say, like any other student in that classroom. I always say, like, let's just talk about an elementary student inclusion. And, maybe if their primary placement is a special day class, inclusion in a gen ed class, they should have a desk, they should have a name tag. Their work should be hanging up on the wall at back to school night, just like every other student's. They should be on the class roster,
Mhm.
right? Anything, emails that go out to parents, that parent should be on the list. They're a student in that classroom.
Now, if you can change one thing in special education overnight, what would it be?
Oh, wow. um, I would want more educators to presume competence,
Hmm.
to look at our students, all of our students, as learners, and they are competent. Don't put a ceiling on them. Don't tell them if they don't do something by this age, they won't. Don't put labels on them. Presume competence.
Now, if there's a parent listening who just got a diagnosis yesterday and is
Yeah.
terrified about their first IEP meeting, what would you tell them?
Take a deep breath. um, it's a marathon usually. It's not a sprint. So take a deep breath, slow down, start. I mean, if you're going into your first IEP meeting, write down the questions you have for the team, right? Write down your concerns. And if one of your concerns is, I just don't know what to ask for some people in the IEP meeting to explain, like, let's take a step back. What is an IEP? What does this mean? Right? Can you just decipher this for me? So start with the foundation where you're as educated as you can be, but you don't have to, you won't have all the answers right away.
Hmm.
And remember that school, the IEP document, it is ever changing, right? It's like a moment in time when you write it. It's a fluid document. It is ever changing. So be transparent, be open with the team, um, and take it one step at a time.
All right. Now, what should they do before that meeting?
So if this was a parents going into their very first IEP meeting, well, I mean, practically speaking, what I always tell parents is make sure you request a copy of the draft IEP 3 days before the meeting. Read the IEP document before you go into that meeting. Write down all of your questions, and there are no dumb questions. This is a very like you said before, there's acronyms. It's a very complicated document. So get it ahead of time, read through it, write down all your questions, and make sure they're answered in that meeting.
what should they remember about their role in that room?
That they're part of the IEP team. I think parents forget that. The IEP team, I always tell them, first and foremost, you're the most important member. You know your child better than anyone else on this team. So you are part of the IEP team.
And what would you whisper to them if you could sit beside them?
Probably would change from IEP meeting to IEP meeting, just depending on their needs. But sometimes I'd whisper, it's okay to get emotional.
Hmm,
It's okay to be mom. It's okay to be vulnerable. I'm here. I've got you. Um, sometimes, just depending on the client, I'd say I have a couple clients who probably don't always, well, let me stop. I would tell them that there's no wrong thing to say, right? Like I said before, there's no dumb questions. Make sure you get your questions answered. Um, does that answer your question well enough?
yeah. And
Okay.
finally, where can people find out more about you and get hold of you online?
So, I guess easiest way, I have a website. It's blueglassesadvocacy.com. And all the information to contact me is on my website. And then also, I have an Instagram following, and it's Blue Glasses Advocacy.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That was Vicky Christensen. I'm Reed Miles. Stay curious, stay fearless, and remember wherever you are, you're never alone. See you next time. Thank you, Vicky.
Oh, thank you, Reed. I appreciate it.